Welcome to X-Men 97, Episode 3 of Cyclops is Waiting for Me, an X-Men animated recap podcast. I am JC, and unfortunately, I have not read the trade that this story is based off of, so there are going to be a bunch of questions I'm sure Rod is going to have that I am only going to have certain answers to, sadly enough. I've never picked up the Inferno trade.
And I'm Rod. I had my question answered as if this series was going to be catered at all towards children, and that was definitely answered in this specific episode.
Kids are raised differently now than how they used to be, Rod.
I know. So I'll put it this way. Me and my brother have this understanding because my niece is not very sheltered, you know? So we have this thing, instead of saying like kids shouldn't watch this, is like the parent should be aware of things before the kid watches it. So like one of our first conversations about this is when she watched the movie Turning Red. It's not that she shouldn't have watched it, but he just needed to have the heads up that she might have some period questions after watching the movie, so he's ready for it, not just like having a Thursday and then having to launch it.
And she walks in and is like, hey, we have to have a conversation, Dad.
Well, even better, she was going to watch it while they were on like a 6-hour road trip. So I was like, maybe that day you pick Frozen again. Mm-hmm. So this one, like nothing bad, but I was like, you know, for a 9-year-old, there might be some questions of what's going on.
Like hell?
Episode 3. Yeah. Well, she's a church girl. She probably knows about that part. I was thinking like maybe like some of the skin melting stuff and everything, but
oh yeah. We'll get to that.
Cyclops is Waiting for Me is our weekly podcast series where we're going back and watching every single X-Men animated episode we can find. This podcast started with the original 1992 X-Men the animated series. Building up to this moment, the release of X-Men 97, we're in week 3, so at least there's no more delays.
Week 2, episode 3.
Yeah, week 2. Yeah.
Because you got those episodes out on time on the edit, so.
Oh, Lord. Yeah, we'll put a little backstory, all this and stuff. I just said, fuck it. And I just pulled an all-nighter and then took a nap and then pulled an all-dayer the next day because those were monster episodes. Each of those episodes were the length of 2 of our normal ones. And I do have like sound recording stuff because I work in music, but I'm used to dealing with like 3 to 5 minutes of audio at a time.
This was not that. No.
Yeah, no, the podcasts are already like a little bit of a stretch because they're like, you know, around an hour or so. We hit the 2-hour mark. I was like, ooh, this is going to be a long night.
Well, you killed it. And I'm sure everybody who listened, including, it looks like according to analytics on Spotify, we had new listeners popping in. So welcome to all the people who are listening to this shit show for the first time ever.
Oh, yeah, and I think my friend Tim, if you're listening, he was unaware that we had the podcast going on, but we had a little chat over DMs, and he's all in on this show. Another little side note, if anybody out that's worried that AI is going to take their jobs, I wouldn't be too worried just yet, because if they could, that editing job would go straight to AI, and I have access to some like cutting-edge technology, and none of it has been able to do it right or without y'all noticing, so...
Yeah, there's one specific phrase that the AI edit whacked, and I can't remember what it was. I think I was saying a date or Magneto's name or something to that degree, and I heard the stumble, and I was like, oh, that was the AI that snagged that, because, yeah, you were also probably editing that part at 4 a.m. So
maybe I lost track of time that day.
Some quick reminders. We're a recap show about an episode that aired less than 1 week ago. There are going to be spoilers. If you don't want it spoiled for you, pause the podcast, watch the episode, and come back. And we are currently not sponsored or affiliated with Marvel Animation, Disney, or Disney Plus in any way.
And don't forget to follow us on social media at Cyclops IWFM Pod on Instagram, TikTok, Threads, X, and Facebook. And of course, make sure to follow us on all your favorite podcast services.
And now on to the show. Today, we're going to be talking about Season 1, Episode 3, titled Fire Made Flesh. It aired on March 27th of 2024, currently sits at an 8.7 star rating on IMDb, so it is the second of the 3 in terms of ranking. The debut episode is actually the lowest ranking of all of them right now.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You know, I guess I liked the first episode a lot, but I've heard from a couple friends that was their least favorite of the 3 so far.
I could see why, because I think it's everything you expect it to be if you're going in with a positive mindset. It delivers, but it didn't do the different things that we saw from these others. And I think we kind of talked about it in that first episode. A lot of the episode was revealed in the trailer. We're seeing stuff new for the very first time in episodes 2 and 3. So
that's true. And I texted you after I watched this episode. This was wild. Like, I don't think I would have called this reading the comics or not. Like, just how everything with this episode.
And I do just want to give a shout out to our friend of the show, Charley. Charley was one of the writers credited on this episode. So
nice.
Very, very happy for them. And yeah, it was cool to see a friend working on an episode that I know they were super excited to be a part of.
No, that's great. And also kept secret for 2.5 years.
I mean, it's impressive. Yeah, like, you know, I gave the professional courtesy of never asking a question once I found out that they were a part of the writing team for the show. But I did know right before the episode debuted, they were one of the writers on it. So I was very excited to see where it came from. So, awesome. Yeah, kicking stuff off, the previously on, Rod, it was Jean's voice.
Yeah, I guess they're going to, was that Evolution that did that? They cycled through the characters' voices?
Did they cycle? I mean, I remember there was an Xavier and a Cyclops, but I don't remember there being other ones up to this point where we had to take our break yet.
It's interesting, too, that it was Jean this time, and it was like a nondescript voice the first time.
Right. Well, no, that was it a nondescript voice? I thought it was...
Well, I didn't immediately recognize it, and the captions didn't name it. It just said, like, announcer or something.
Oh, weird. I definitely thought it was Cyclops.
Huh, okay.
Yeah.
Or if it was supposed to be, whoever captioned it messed up.
Right. So, you know, we get the leaving team conversation, the baby being born, the, you know, going into Gyric's mind, something terrible's coming, the connection conversations with Storm, and then Morph with the Jean Fate. And I will say I did love the discourse going on online leading up to this episode, because it was like, well, that's obviously the real Jean because she's fainting.
I thought about that after we recorded our last episodes. I went out with a mutual friend of ours and like was just having lunch. We were just talking about the X-Men show, and I realized it in real time talking about it. I was like, oh yeah, so the first time you see the real Jean, she faints.
Yeah.
Like, that's so funny. That had to be on purpose. And then the moment she wakes up in this episode, she faints.
And then, of course, it ends with what we were pointing out with the swapped expressions of Jean looking of who we will find out is the clone, looking upset. So,
oh yeah,
goes into the intro. The moments that are in there, we see from X-Men 92, the Magneto fight on the missile base. You see the Dark Phoenix shot, which we've seen before. And then we see that they have swapped the Jubilee running into the fence surrounded by the mob with Sunspot taking that spot here.
That was so interesting. You could tell they saved it for this.
Yeah.
And I wonder if there was more than one or like a specific reason for like the decision on their end. Some of the other characters, when they redo those scenes, they like, you know, like with Rogue, we saw better angles and stuff. This was just a 1-for-1.
It was absolutely a 1-for-1. See a little more flashback. You have Lalandra and Xavier in a Shi'ar control room. And then you get the Phoenix explosion shot from the Dark Phoenix episodes, Bishop falling through the time stream. And then you get also a new shot, Rogue and Gambit, where she's doing the glove kiss, where she's kissing into her glove instead of making contact with Gambit.
I forget, did we see that in the show? Or was that a comic book thing?
I believe there was a scenario where that was seen. It definitely was from a comic book too, but I think we saw that for some reason in 92.
And then I saw online people were pointing out the scene where in the intro where Scott's sitting with Jean by the bed was from 2 episodes, because the original, I didn't notice it when we rewatched it. The original series used the same bed shot 2 different episodes.
Oh, did it?
They recycled it. Probably because of budget reasons.
Yeah, I mean, that would make sense.
So the last little thing about this intro, between the first 2 and then this episode, I learned the guitarist on this intro is a YouTuber named, forgive me if I pronounce this wrong, I've been practicing it, Neely Brosh. She's not just a YouTuber, she's Berkeley trained and everything, so I'm pretty sure she had some of my old professors. I didn't go to Berkeley, but some of my professors later on went out to Berkeley. And it's just kind of cool to see like a young guitarist like get to do that. But also I think that has to do a lot with when people say like, oh, it just doesn't feel the same. Love Ron, he has an iconic theme song, but he also, you know, infamously play the guitar part on a keyboard.
Right.
So this is actually like a very like well-trained guitarist. So maybe that's what we're hearing is like the virtuosic skill.
Right, because you're doing something that was normally done via a keyboard from an actual guitar. So just for sake of keeping the conversation clear and easy, halfway through the episode, she reveals her name is the Goblin Queen.
Yeah.
Instead of saying clone Jean, fake Jean, we're just going to refer to the original one who Hank is saying is the original. That is Jean. And then the one that we know is the clone throughout the entire thing, we're just going to call her Goblin Queen. That's cool, fair. Just for sake of keeping it simple, because otherwise... Yeah. Clone Jean, fake Jean, Jean Doe, except like it's just going to be fucking chaos, and it's already an episode about chaos. So
I did appreciate the Jean Doe line. That made me like actually laugh out loud.
Yeah. So we have Beast with Jean. Jean is passed out. She's on a heart monitor, and the Goblin Queen goes up and grabs her hand and then starts to see flashbacks. In the flashback, there's no face on, it's particularly Jean. Other people do have all their faces, their features and stuff like that, except for Jean. I didn't read this original saga when it was coming out in comics. When they did a recent revisiting of the Spider-Man clone saga stuff that's going on, Ben Reilly, who is the clone of Peter Parker, had a similar issue, except he was not able to see the memories of other people's faces. Like there's a really crazy shot where he can't remember what Uncle Ben's face looked like, for example.
Oh, wild. Yeah, so the face thing, I didn't notice until the second time I watched it. So like when I watched it for first time just for fun, like I recognized all the scenes, and I don't know how I didn't notice that Jean didn't have a face in all those. And
you were paying attention to who they were with, that's all.
Maybe, I guess, I don't know. Like but then I watched it again to take notes. And I was like, wait, does she not have any facial features?
No face.
How did I miss that?
Yeah, I watched it originally right at midnight when it came out on Tuesday night, Wednesday morning, and then watched it again yesterday night, just to write down notes. Because when we do it for Evolution, I only really have enough time for doing like one watch through. But because we're coming out on one day and not recording for another day, like I'm able to put more time into it, which is also probably why our notes are so much more intensive too.
Right. I actually, even though like Evolution's new to us, like it was kind of a secondary thing for me. Like this was the one that like I wanted to like enjoy normally.
Same. I didn't want to watch it while pausing to take notes or look down in episodes.
Yeah. And I'll say this, it brings me joy to like have this kind of like childlike excitement about stuff again, because I've been excited about things before, but this is a particularly like very young feeling. I also put it. And I look on social media and I see like people our age getting to like their X-Men pajamas and like putting their kids to bed and then sitting up and watching this. I'm like, that's so great. Like everybody's so excited and into it. Doesn't give a fuck about like being taken seriously or whatever. I saw a guy like get into like Wolverine pajamas and then sit down from his TV.
I did see one post, and this is an incredibly brave individual who probably just doesn't spend a lot of time online. They're like, I am literally watching every week on Saturday mornings. And it's obviously they're not in the same career trajectories that you and I are, because we basically have to live on social media networks. But I can't imagine. I was like, cool, I would literally just have to be signed off of everything for 4 days, or this would get spoiled for me.
And I'm just going to vent something here, because
go for it.
You're way more patient with the Facebook groups than I am. I just don't acknowledge them. But like I see this stuff comes through, I'm like, why do you exist? I saw something today in one of the groups where like there was a guy who declared that he was choosing to wait every 2 weeks to watch the episodes so he could watch 2 in a row, and he was asking everybody in the group not to spoil things for him. It's like, that's a you problem.
So I actually know the post you're talking about. It had come up yesterday, and I gave a very thoughtful reply, which was, how do you snooze a Facebook group? Because I said, this is a group that has 200,000 people that are a part of it. The moderators are doing their best job to avoid something that is the most blatant of spoilers for the sake of spoiling for a reasonable amount of time, but stuff is still going to get through. Like, we can't expect these people who are, moderating a group of this size for literally nothing. There's no payment for doing this and stuff like that, to like just have to sit there and review every single post. That's not a reasonable ask for people. So,
and even because I think the group doesn't have like a 3-day guideline or something.
I think it's roughly 2 days, but there's certain posts that will make it through, certain ones that will not. It's, it's a level of discretion.
I think it'd be fair if this poster had like shown frustration with people like posting spoilers like on the day of or something.
Right. Like if you're posting at 12:30 at night when you watched it at 12 o'clock. Yeah.
Yeah. But him saying that he personally had made a decision to wait every 2 weeks and was requesting, like you said, 200,000 other people to it. Like, this guy has way too much like main character syndrome. Like,
nope.
What? No, let's just kick you out of the group and save everybody's trouble.
Well, other people were not as cordial as I was in the response, but yeah, it was just like, they're like, good luck, dude. And like, the meme responses were great. There was definitely one where somebody was using the Wolverine punching Cyclops in the stomach meme. Yep.
As they should.
So in the flashbacks, we see Jean solo. You see a trio shot of Scott, Jean, and Wolverine. Her with Scott. The sad kiss from the Morlocks episode, Phoenix recovery, the wedding, And then there's the, Goblin Queen starts mentioning, oh, it's like their awareness started up literally yesterday. You see Jean awakening in this green castle lab, which reminded me a lot of the Magneto lab that was in Evolution.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I guess it could also be very similar to Sinister's lab from the final second to last episode of 92.
Oh, when they went back to the 1800s.
Yeah, the Jack the Ripper stuff.
Yeah, it's funny, when I saw that lab, I got flashbacks to the Beetlejuice cartoon.
I haven't watched that in literally 35 years, Rod.
Yeah, it probably doesn't. I haven't gone back to watch it. It probably doesn't. Like we said, like, keep your nostalgia.
Yeah, the rose-colored glasses are not worth giving up on certain things. So, and then we see Jean is running through a swamp. She ends up at an alleyway, and you see that Crazy Eddie's that we saw in the first episode. Seeing Magneto on the TV, and then realizing she needs to go home, and that's where we see her walking on the front of the mansion.
And I didn't notice this until the second round either, or I didn't notice the significance of it, but when she gets thrown out, so when Goblin Queen gets thrown out of Jean's head, keep that straight, gets thrown out of Jean's head, the Sinister diamond like explodes on her forehead.
It's a flash. It's not the explosion, but there's the flash from it. Yeah.
But it appears on there, so I was like, oh, that's the signifier that he's doing something actively.
Yeah, there's a monitor situation going on.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if it will go up before this episode goes live or after. I have to figure out myself how to edit on TikTok. But that does start to get addressed in the X-Men prequel comic, which I do think is actually coming out monthly. So the 4-issue prequel comic is going to conclude like 2 months after this series is done airing, which is super weird to me.
Hilarious. Oh, so it's only 4 issues?
I believe it's 4 issues, yeah.
Oh, that's fun. That's manageable. I might actually be able to read that. We'll see. Not count our chickens first.
Yeah. But it does actually address Sinister's knowledge of a pregnant Jean. The Nasty Boys are in it. And then the preview for the next issue includes Sabretooth with the Marauders. You see Birdie, who I guarantee you have no idea who that is. Yeah, the face Rod is making is exactly what I was expecting.
It only sounds familiar. It sounds familiar, but I think it's because you've mentioned Birdie before, and that might be...
I literally had to look up who Birdie was because I've not even read Birdie stuff.
Okay. Well, I haven't heard anything about them. I just feel like that came up with something, but...
And then at that point, Goblin Queen falls back. And then, to your point, Morph is like, oh, well, we got to give her a name. And he dubs the one we know to be the real Jean as Jean Doe, which was really freaking good.
Yeah, that was great. If I remember right, did everybody just kind of have like a dry response? There was like, okay.
Yep. But then they also say, oh, well, anyone who agrees, hands up, and then turns into Spiral and puts all the hands up on Spiral.
I thought that was great, but what was even better was, and once again, another second watch thing, when everybody else moved on, I kept paying attention to Morph the second time around. Morph like just sits down very slowly, awkwardly, with all 6 hands still up in the background.
I would do the same, personally.
Yeah.
Yep. And then Beast doesn't handle this well, I feel like.
I think Beast is either more logical than we thought he was, or his emotions just broke.
Yeah.
Of one of his like 6 failed relationships in the original series. Because this whole episode,
after the ship blew up, that's when he was done with relationships. Right. After he couldn't bang the Shi'ar ship.
Yeah. Or any sort of emotion, like strong emotions, because like this whole episode, he doesn't have the same level of reaction as everyone else to anything. Yeah,
and basically is like, yeah, the one on the couch is the actual Jean Grey, and Wolverine is the first to question, like, wait, how? And Beast basically explains that there's carbon dating he's able to do on their cells, and it's like, yeah, they're molecularly the same, but this one is aged the right amount and this other one is not, but I don't know how much it is, and I don't know how, like, where that's going to be revealed when the switch has happened. Mm-hmm. But I felt like that was very intentional to keep it ambiguous, not just for this episode, but for future episodes too.
That's a good point, because I was thinking, like, when I watched it, I was like, oh, that's a great idea. I never thought about that, because carbon dating can't really be cheated barring time travel or something. But
I literally don't know enough about carbon dating, but I assume it's pretty fucking foolproof if that's how we determine how many millions of years old a dinosaur's bones are.
Yeah, or like trees and stuff.
Yep.
And but to your point, like, let's see if I'm getting this straight. Goblin Queen breaks the petri dish. I don't know, whatever Beast has in his hands. He's like, no more tests.
At first, Magneto's the one who says our Jean, referring to Goblin Queen, is a clone. Goblin Queen is pissed because they have the memories, then turns to Scott, and Scott has the like, I don't know what to say, pause, and that's where Magneto's like, well, we need to confirm the test, and Jean tosses the petri dish. So.
Yeah. I like how, well, three things happened there. Scott had the same animation still that Sunspot had in the previous episode, or 2 episodes ago, where it's just a still frame, and they just zoom in on awkwardly. I like that Magneto is being logical. I'm starting to believe he's actually like kind of good now, because he was pretty logical this whole episode.
Sunspot's there.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
So I did go back and check. At the end of the previous episode, Sunspot was not there when Jean popped in, and then Sunspot was there now. The only thing is we don't know how long it has been since Jean arrived back and then was coming to with this, test from Goblin Queen on her and stuff like that. So I don't know if it was supposed to be like the next night or something like that. I don't know. It was a little bit of a, where did Sunspot come from? But I did notice that's where they popped in.
I have a couple questions about certain characters and their whereabouts in this specific episode. I didn't notice Sunspot, but that makes sense. But the reason I mentioned the breaking the petri dish thing or whatever he had was that because that would have been like kind of a loophole that they would have to explain of like, yeah, that's how you could tell when they swapped by the range of like the difference of the carbon dating ages and stuff. I didn't even think about that. That's a good point. Like they should be able to tell when they swapped in general from like how old the cells are.
I think you have a challenge, and I could be totally wrong about this, and if somebody actually understands carbon dating better than I do, please weigh in the comments. You could do it to a relative degree, but because it's essentially like carbon dating has to do, is it with half-lives or something like that? I think it gets you within a range, but like you can't get to like a specific date. So if it's like you could get to a 6-month range or something like that, it's like, oh, if you could only say, this is a 5-year range where this could have happened, like that doesn't solve any of your issues if the team's only been around for 5 years.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, if it's within like a few months to a year, then they might be able to be like, well, that was the second Phoenix thing, so maybe.
Right. Yeah, but if all they know is like it happened somewhere within 1 to 5 years from now, you're fucked.
Yeah.
Yep. And the Goblin Queen gives the I am Jean speech.
Should have been the first red flag, right? Because Jean never does that.
She doesn't do it, but she's also never been in a scenario where she's had a clone. So it's like, how do you react to that?
Well, it just because you pointed out in one of the last 2 episodes we recorded about Bishop doing a move with Gambit, and that being kind of significant because Bishop came back in time to
originally kill him, kill
Gambit. And in that episode, one of the few things I remember from that season, when Bishop was like, one of you killed Charles, Jean was like, well, it could have been me. It's like she's always kind of had that like, well, we don't know, time travel is weird, so like she's always been fainting. And
so you're saying it's a little more in her character to not give that to. I could totally see that.
Yeah, like because this was like, I guess on hindsight, like the second or third red flag, because she's the one that wanted to leave in the first 2 episodes, and in this one she's like defending herself.
She's the one who wanted to leave. Like I pointed out at the end of the last episode, her face looked pissed when this other one showed up.
Yeah. And then why fight the carbon dating test if, like,
if you're going to be real.
Yeah. Like that would just like cement like, okay, yeah, no, I'm this child's mother. I'm your wife. Like done.
Well, everybody feels guilty and like it's very, very awkward and uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Scott is, we've got to be sure. And at that point, the Goblin Queen is pissed off, takes Nathan and walks off on it. And like I said, I kind of get it, but it's also, to your point, it's like, who she is. And it could have played out the exact opposite way. Who knows? The other one could have been it. And how would that have been the right reaction? So yeah, I can see it going either way.
One like visceral reaction to the scene. I have no paternal instinct whatsoever, but I still would not have let anyone that angry take a baby with them.
Yeah.
At all. Someone who just threw glass across the room, be like, we're going to let Jubilee babysit for a second, and then we'll just sort this out on the side.
Meanwhile, Jubilee is like me, that they're like, take the baby, and you you hold it like it's a bomb.
Still safer than sending with Goblin Queen, even before you know it's Goblin Queen.
It's true. Goblin Queen is holding the baby's crying. Scott goes into the bedroom and is like offering to take Nathan. And to their credit, they even if they aren't Jean, they are Jean because they know the line that you could have hit with, especially with how fresh it is, well, Storm would have believed me.
So I'm wondering about that. Like, I don't know how, but the way she put it sounds like there's going to be like another subplot with Storm. Not necessarily that she knew something, but did Goblin Queen set stuff up with her unknowingly or something, like...
I don't know if it was necessarily setting something up unknowingly. I do think kind of what we pointed out in the last episode of the relationship between who we know to be Goblin Queen Jean and Storm felt closer than what we had remembered from 92. Like the dynamic of them was closer.
Yeah.
So maybe it was just this alternate side of Jean from the cloning process just happened to bond more with Storm over time than our original Jean did.
Oh, yeah. So it could either just be by chance or like what I was wondering is it seems like, and we get into this later in the episode, but like we find out that Sinister kind of like had predisposed Goblin Queen for things that she wasn't aware of. And so that's why I was like, man, was there some predisposition to like buddy up with Storm because Storm's like, the Omega level one on there. Maybe not the leader, but like we know she can like lift a finger and zap a dozen Sentinels.
Goblin Queen continues to say, beast tests aren't going to change that I am Nathan's mother. And Scott doesn't question the mother part, which I think is probably the only reason why he's still alive at this point and didn't get X-Men 2'd. But he does the whole like, everyone's been going through a lot lately. And it's like, don't say that. That's the worst thing you could do is when somebody is frustrated, just tell them to be calm. That felt like that very similar energy,
Yeah, because it doesn't help the thing happening at that moment.
Then probably one of my favorite like segments of the entire episode is when the Goblin Queen is saying for Scott to trust her, the life they were building and all that. Scott is like, I do, but she doesn't believe him. She's like, you could never lie to me, but I know that you always believed in me. And that's when he gets kicked out.
Such a complex conversation because then she even said something to the point of like, how many times have I literally died with this group?
Right.
And it's like, yes, but that kind of makes it more suspicious. You went away for long periods of time. Mm-hmm. And now that we find out there's this clone situation, this doesn't help either of your cases. Like you are whoever the clone is.
Yeah. It's very easy to say you came back from the dead if you were a clone that came back from the dead.
Right.
Yeah. So she's talking to herself saying, we should have left when we had the chance. We still can. And that's when the baby monitor goes off. And it's obviously Sinister's voice. And it's Jean Grey, are you Jean? And that was the instant where I was like, that is the first time watching it. That was the 100% confirmation that was not just Beast got a test wrong. That was absolutely the Goblin Queen.
Yeah. And also, many points for being one of the most terrifying sequences of the show so far.
Yeah.
Is that voice. That was perfect. They got that horror down, like unironically, like not campy or anything. Like that was genuinely terrifying.
There is a part to 90s Sinister that I love that modern Sinister in the comics does not give me. Modern Sinister in the comics, he's a mastermind, he's a planner, but he's not terrifying.
Okay.
He's actually a worse character, like in terms of like there's a clone of him who basically sides with all the anti-mutant groups like Orcus and stuff like that. But this one is terrifying to me. Yeah, there's something about their presentation.
Yeah, the actor did a great job with the delivery, and also whoever decided, maybe Charlie had something to do with this, deciding to put it through the baby monitor. Because even though I've never raised children, I'm an uncle to enough friends, and actually an uncle to like my niece that like been around enough baby monitors. They have not yet invented a baby monitor that's not inherently creepy.
No, they are all the most like lo-fi quality sound that if a baby's wailing through it, there's like a 50% chance it's coming from a horror movie.
Right. Yeah. The sound, or even the high-tech ones that have the videos also look terrifying. They all
because the babies have glowing eyes. Yeah. That should not be a feature. That should be a bug.
And I know it's because, infrared or whatever, but 2024, we can figure out the filter or something.
And the Goblin Queen cannot answer at that point.
Yeah. So it's like, she didn't know, right? Is that what we're supposed to get? And then
I don't think it has clicked with her yet. I think she's still in disbelief from Beast stuff, and then this is just totally putting her over the edge.
Yeah.
So we jump over to the lab. Bishop is mentioning that his time band is coming along pretty good, it looks like. Beast is still focused on the blood sample of what's going on. And Scott is with Jean next to the bed. So to me, that feels like Scott even if he hasn't said it, I think he knows that this is his gene.
Yeah, because the biggest thing we got left with in 92 was they have a psychic connection.
Yeah.
Right? So something, even if it's faint in the back of his head, is probably like pulling him that way.
Right. I think the interesting part is he probably has it with the Goblin Queen too, but maybe he could tell the difference when both of them are happening.
Yeah, like, I know this is a really random metaphor, but I went out to get coffee with a friend yesterday, and this was on top of my head. Like, the difference between, like, sweetener and sugar, or, like, I was at a taco night with the same friends, and, like, Beyond Meat and ground beef. Like,
I would say it's closer to me for like Red Bull and sugar-free Red Bull than the meat thing, only because I could taste the meat thing from a mile away. So
gotcha. Well, that's what we were saying. Like, so because I brought some Beyond like taco meat with me to this taco night thing.
Yeah,
and I was like, I'm not one of those guys that's like, oh, it tastes the same, because A, I haven't had meat in like 15 years, but B, like, I don't want it to taste like that. It's part of the reason I don't eat it is I don't like the taste. But most people who I know, like, are vegetarians, like, oh yeah, this does taste like a hamburger, until they eat a hamburger again. They're like, oh no, it doesn't. Like, so it's like you forget until you actually, so I wonder if it felt like the right connection before, and then the real Gene comes in, he's like, oh no.
And it resets, like, oh, that was Beyond Meat that I just had.
Yeah. I like that. This might be the clip. We just compared the Gene Greys to Beyond Meat.
I think we talked about the meat for a little too long. It's going to be a really long clip of us just talking about tacos. Then Scott starts asking Bishop questions where it's like, you told us you didn't remember hearing about a time where Magneto became the leader of the X-Men. Do you ever remember hearing about this? And Bishop goes into this metaphor that he doesn't get quite like through to finish, describing time as like kind of like reading a book, but you're flipping back and forth between the pages. It's almost like how we would read a magazine in like a doctor's office kind of thing. It's like you're gonna get all the information, but how much of it you retain, and you're swapping back and forth. And if you have to go to the doctor's office a few times in a short period of time, you may read 3 magazines and not remember which one you've read or not. So
I feel like they cut him off right before we heard why he's there.
Yeah,
because they still haven't made it clear.
Which is not addressed in the first issue of the comic. I will give you that part. Again, don't know if it'll be out before or after this, but in the first issue of the comic, his presence is there and he's an active participant, but it does not explain the why. But his hair is already cut.
That actually gives credence to like your theory from the last couple episodes of them releasing the comics in real time to not spoil the current plot. So if they would have explained why he's there ahead, and we would it wouldn't be the suspense right now to know why he's there.
And like I said, there's a little bit of ambiguity on the Sinister side of stuff. So it's like, I don't know if Jean has already been replaced or is going to be replaced. So I think especially with it coming out this week, that was fully intentional of like, maybe something happens in issue 2 that if it was already out, like this mystery would have already been spoiled online. So, but yeah, he gets interrupted and Beast gives the longest way of saying it is Sinister because of the signature to the work done from a DNA perspective.
Yeah, and doesn't he give his signature catchphrase too?
Oh, my stars and garters.
Yeah, even I recognize that.
Yep. I did, to congratulate Charley on watching the episode, send them that as the first text the next morning.
Oh, that's great. I don't even know what that phrase means, but I know it's Beast.
It's the more eloquent way of saying like, holy shit.
I know, but I don't. I'm sure I could look it up, but like those two things don't sound like they normally come together in a phrase.
Fun fact about this podcast, for those of you listening, when we were trying to figure out the name for this shit show, that was one of my suggestions. And Rod goes, I don't know what that means.
Oh, that's why I heard it before. Okay, so that's why I know it. It's because one of the suggestions you sent over.
Yep. And my thought was, if Rod, who only knows the X-Men through the toys, the movies, and of course the cartoon, does not know what that phrase means, it is not a good enough title for the show.
That's probably a good call.
So back in the bedroom, the Goblin Queen is with the baby monitor, and Sinister reveals himself to her and basically is like, yeah, you could call me your father.
We almost got a daddy line.
Really close. Like, I'm glad they didn't take that route.
Do you interpret that as like a projection or hallucination from her, or that he actually physically went there?
I interpreted that as projection.
Okay, yeah. I second watch, I realized that the first time around, I was like, why did you pop in and then pop back out?
Yeah, no, I think that was the Goblin Queen's mental thing of feeling like he's in the room because of the level of control he's exerting on her. It felt like he was physically in the room, because very quickly after that, it disappears. And then, it's essentially that you and your son are meant for so much more. And, he basically saying like he needs the kid.
Yeah. It makes sense in hindsight, with all of Sinister's motivations in the first series. He's like, this is the second best thing. If he can't make the thing in the lab, he's just going to trick them to do it on their own and then just swoop in and take the baby.
And then he points out that, he made her.
Did he say he baked her?
Yeah, that was the exact. I was trying to figure out. There was, I had my moment of that is a word that it says bailed, and I don't know what that's supposed to say. But yes, he said he baked her.
It's kind of, it gives me the same feeling I got like when I heard like muties and stuff for the first time. It's like, it's not exactly a gross phrase.
It's a dehumanizing phrase, though.
Yeah, it is because of his tone of voice and how it's being used in the context of this universe.
Yeah, and then, he also is like, it's time for me to usher you to your royal destiny.
This is so dramatic.
He's so dramatic. He was literally in London, what's this, 100 years prior to the events of the show. Yeah. He's a theater kid. Let's be totally real.
Yeah, with Jean's, great-grandmother, who was?
Or grandmother, because of timelines. It could be. Think of it as Jean is 30 in the 90s. It could be great. Yeah, great's probably right.
Okay, yeah, I don't know. But I was like, what a weird, I don't know, just way older guy, going after. It's kind of like when Captain America in the MCU, made out with
Peggy Carter's niece, Sharon.
Ooh.
That one's extra weird.
Well, it's things that can't possibly happen in real life, hopefully, but are just new moral questions for a universe where that's possible.
Like the anime trope of it's not creepy because they're 5,000 years old, but it's dude, they still look like a child. It's still creepy.
Yeah.
Yep. But then he continues to point out that she belongs to him, mind and body, and there is no choice.
Yeah, that's the gross.
Yep. So you get the quick flashback to the research lab. You see there are 2 genes on the table. He basically refers to her as the queen, and then at that point the gem appears on her head, and that's when you get the full formal transformation to her being the Goblin Queen, which is, it's literally a reference to the Sailor Moon transformation.
I saw you sent me that, and I didn't know if that was a joke or that actually was a reference.
I believe that is a reference to the Sailor Moon.
Well,
it's not a one-to-one, but the poses they strike are damn close. So,
and it's not the only one. In fact, there's a dozen random non-X-Men references in this specific episode.
We may have been told that this episode is an Easter egg hunt. So,
which is right. I forgot about that.
Which is appropriate because it literally came out 4 days before Easter.
Yeah, that's true. And then you guys will be hearing this the day after Easter. So Easter break for most kids and stuff if you're in school or work or whatever. Yeah, my note here was being evil means getting sexy.
Yep.
I only know Madeline Pryor from stuff that you and some other friends have shown me when the toys got revealed for this. She's more modest than the pictures you all sent me.
The comic book version is not as modest.
Yeah, that's what I mean. But she's still probably the most skin, I think, that this show, the previous and this one, I think this might be the very edge of how much they can go for this,
Yeah, it's this and then the Hellfire Club version of Jean are the level of sexy that this has gone in. So
yeah, because it was just you're evil, so now you got to show your cleavage.
There was a great meme that was going around where it was essentially comparing Goblin Queen before she finds out that she's a clone to finding out she's a clone with Lois Griffin, and they use that classic shot of Lois Griffin putting on the dominatrix outfit. Yeah,
that's so funny.
Yeah, the internet has been having a lot of fun with the memes on this show. Shout out to whomever did the Gambit one, where it was Gambit looking out the front of a house, and it said "you cheater" on a bed sheet with Magneto and Rogue on it. That was a solid one as well.
I saw one where someone was responding to one of the people complaining about Gambit in the crop top, and then posting pictures of every time an actor in the 90s did a crop top, from Adam Sandler to all these, it was just in Airheads and stuff. It was just, that was the look.
Yeah, I think we talked about that in the first episode, is that was just how dudes in the 90s would sometimes dress. So yeah. But then you see Goblin Queen start smashing a bunch of photos, including the wedding photo, which best I could tell, that was actually a reference to X-Men number 30, which happened in 94, because there was X-Men, Uncanny X-Men, and then there was the X-Men Jim Lee relaunch and stuff, which was the wedding issue, which I do have saved somewhere back home in Connecticut.
Speaking of, now that we don't know when they got swapped, part of me just kind of like wants them to be the switch to happen before the wedding, so they still have never gotten married technically.
That's awful, Rod. That's actually mean.
Well, it's not even because of like personal satisfaction. It feels like a story through line that would be wickedly poetic. Did you ever watch Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.?
Yeah.
Well, I can't remember their name.
Fitzsimmons.
How they're cosmically like doomed to never be together. Like, it's not fun personally to watch, but narratively as an action show is like a kind of like a beautiful force of nature, you know? It's like this big tragedy. So this is like, is the animated X-Men, Jean and Scott, are they never able to get married? Is that just the thing?
So that photo gets smashed. You see a team photo gets smashed, a picture of Jean and Xavier together getting smashed, and then the green Marvel girl costume spills out onto the floor. The baby starts crying, and she gives the creepy "mommy's busy," and like she is full-fledged cracked at this point.
Yeah, because stuff started warping by that point yet?
Right, that's when the Sailor Moon transformation happens. And then she basically like says like, you know, this is my Inferno now.
Yeah, so what Morph says later about being hell is not hyperbole.
No, it's literal hell. Yeah. Speaking of Morph, we jump over to Morph, Logan, and Gambit leaving the danger room. And it sounds like they beat the shit out of Morph, is kind of what I got from that workout session. Yeah,
and I guess they are still new to re-entering the team, so probably the least experienced. You know, like even though Morph was there before, there's been this huge like absence.
Right, and even if it is the 9 to 10 months since they rejoined the team after the events of Graduation Day, you still have Logan and Gambit who have never left the team. Yeah. So yeah, they're just going to be in better shape than Morph, realistically. Yeah. And then they just he's like, oh yeah, maybe we'll give you a rematch. And
this is so mean.
Morph is like, cool, let me check the schedule. And they go through the schedule. And I love that they actually went through all the effort of showing every time slot as 2-hour time slots, that they are booked back to back in every open slot for the weekend of Rogue and Magneto.
So this is credit to people on the internet, because I didn't notice this on my own. I think we found our first animation error in the show.
Oh?
The time, there was one point where it definitely should have said 10 p.m. to 12 a.m. and it said 10 p.m. to 12 p.m.
It might be a really long session, Rod.
Right. Well, that would make sense, except the ones following it.
I know. I'm giving you shit for it, yeah.
But and then the other thing that I was wondering is like, is that real, or did Morph program those times in just to fuck with Gambit, just so he could scroll through it?
That would be, I didn't even think about that. That would be fucked, because Morph would have had to do that before the training session. So that was like a long con on doing that joke.
I was thinking like, who in their right mind, even if they weren't fucking, like, would schedule that many sessions, but like, what are they doing?
Fucking.
Right. So they're definitely
yeah. Well, it's also included along with the joke of like, oh yeah, it looks like Rogue's trying to train her stamina with the new boss, and it's like that was the Rod is not even going to ask me if that's what it meant, because he knows that's what it meant.
I sat back, I was like, damn, they just did my job for me, and it just kept going from there. So there's no more innuendo. It's just happening.
No, and Gambit is like, I'm going to go look for them right now.
I love that. He's like, oh, let's take a thought.
Yeah. And Wolverine does the thing that the internet has been saying for the last week of like, I'm going to go see about a redhead, one of them. Because every meme about Logan is like, well, there's 2 now, so me and Scott don't have to fight, right?
Yeah.
And Morph is left alone. They go into the locker room, and then a shower turns on, and then steam starts to come out. So I do love the shot with Morph as they're by the locker, though. There is a pair of sneakers and a basketball under the bench right there, which just reminds me how much the 92 X-Men love to play basketball.
I mean, maybe it's just because I was younger and like more willing to play basketball at that age and stuff. But to me, basketball felt like a very 90s sport.
It was the cool sport then, especially because like that was like the Jordan era of the Chicago Bulls and stuff like that. Like, yeah it's kind of like, you know, I don't know if we have a sport that's that same zeitgeist level. Maybe football is the most right now because of football being what it is, and then all the Taylor Swift stuff on top of it, you know.
Taylor Swift. I have kind of a skewed view though. I never knew how big basketball was to the rest of the world or the rest of the country, because Indiana, it was just required. Like,
because all you have was the Pacers and that's it.
Yeah, I grew up just like Reggie Miller was just part of my upbringing, Larry Bird, and you know, we were literally, and this is not even a joke or hyperbole, we were required to watch Hoosiers and Hoop Dreams in school.
As like a normal thing, or like during substitute teacher day?
No, like as a normal, like I think we had to write reports about it too.
Where does Indiana rank in terms of education?
Oh, I've said this before, but in case you just joined us for the 97 run, my education in science class, they told us that the skies turned pink in the fall because Johnny Appleseed was planting apple trees in heaven. So
there's a lot to unpack from that statement.
Right.
Speaking of unpacking, Gambit is walking down the hallway and sees a green glow coming from one of the doors and starts to approach it. Quick jump over. Jubilee and Roberto are watching a movie together on the couch. So to your question from 2 episodes ago, is Roberto hitting on Jubilee? Yes, absolutely he is. And then they're watching this horror movie, presumably, and the guy spikes the camera, which I can't remember a movie spiking the camera in the 90s. So that actually felt momentous for what was happening with movies at the time too.
Is that a term for making, like, breaking?
When you look at the camera directly, that is spiking the camera.
Okay. Yeah, because Sunspot's like, did you see that?
Yeah.
And it also wasn't the kind of scene that would have happened in. And then like the muty slur kind of comes across the audio too. Oh, and back up a little bit. I had a note here. Was it Wolverine that said about Gambit what sent his hush puppies up in his stomach? And I was like,
yes.
Damn, they're just going for all of them.
that was a fantastic euphemism.
Yeah, I was like, they're going for ball jokes and everything.
I am curious who on the team was southern enough to come up with that.
And it was
because I never would have thought of something like that. That was great.
Yeah. That was just like back to back. There was like not spacing between all the...
Yeah, because it went right from the stamina thing to the hush puppies thing, like back to back with each other. Back over to the showers, there is a presumably naked Wolverine in the shower. And Morph goes in there and it's like, you know, pops the claws like Wolverine and be like, oh, I'll help you with those hard to reach spots. And then there is a line there that I think I've seen different interpretations of it. I would love to know your thoughts on it before I even bias you with mine, Rod, where Logan is like, I say that with air quotes on an audio podcast, is like always with the jokes as if we didn't know. How did you interpret that?
When Morph popped the claws and was like, need some help with that, I was like, this is definitely not the first time this has happened. I don't know. There's something about the way it was presented. Like, this is like a normal thing for them. Or even the code of like, you go take a shower and I'm going to do something else. Kind of meant like, let's divert and come back or something. But yeah, I've always known is like, so I think like what I kind of took it, because by then it was obvious that it was Sinister because it was a weird Logan voice. Maybe Morph had the thought. Logan doesn't know. But since Sinister's been messing with Morph's head, Sinister knows the thing that Morph hasn't ever vocalized. Maybe that's kind of how I took it.
That's very similar to how I took it too. I've seen people online that speculated it was like Morph's fear that people still thought Morph was under the control of Sinister. I read it a little closer to the way you did, where I thought it was more of like, there is something unsaid that Morph has never outwardly put there about their feelings or relationships with Logan, because they don't feel Logan would reciprocate, and it was being shoved back in their face by this fear. So
yeah, and I feel like that would make more sense because it turns the love triangle into like a, I don't know, square or an octagon or something. Because
I'll tell you, it's not an octagon.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I don't know who else is hooking up in this mansion. Like my suspicions from
not
the 92
Storm.
Series. Right. Well, I don't know. I don't know. We're gonna find out now, because my suspicions from the first season was like, why are all these hot people not hooking up? And it turns out most of them are. Morph, I'm not even sure if it's. I mean, it's the '90s, so there's the not coming out thing.
Right.
But I almost feel like it has more to do with Morph already knows how tortured Logan is about Jean, and so it's like between having another interest and also being like a straight signaling interest.
Well,
probably not the thing to bring up.
And then also, even if you go further back than Jean, there's been like tragedy about the people that Wolverine tends to fall in love with. So yeah,
Morph just doesn't want to die
again.
Yeah. Well, man, Okay, so this is a Logan curse. So anyone, it doesn't have to be a woman that was in a thing with Logan.
If Logan likes you enough, you're dead.
Yeah. Or if you show enough interest in Logan, you will die to some extent.
Yeah, just by you liking Logan. Yeah, even the girl from when he went back to Japan and fought the Silver Samurai, like it's like, oh, she's kind of digging Logan. Oh, look, her entire village is being destroyed.
Morph is like, listen, some self-preservation.
Over in the room, Gambit has opened the door, and we see an homage to Uncanny X-Men number 269, where it is Rogue and Magneto. Definitely naked Magneto. Rogue has a few pieces of clothes, but he's just covered by vines at this point. But they're like melding into each other. That was not in the original shot, just so you're aware. The original shot, Kazar from the Savage Land is the one who bursts into the room when that shot is happening, actually.
Gotcha. And I thought it was interesting, too, because I forget if it was you or someone else that told me, I think it was you that told me that they had hooked up in the comics in the Savage Land because of the power being turned off and stuff.
Something like that, yeah.
So it was interesting to see in this that they were back kind of in the Savage Land setting. But the visual of the skin melding at each other was a brilliant move. It was disturbing, but it was a brilliant move because it was like, the opposite of what we've always known of Rogue.
Yeah. Well, it was her absorbing somebody in the most literal sense.
And he's absorbing back.
Back on the couch, you see... Oh, and they do kiss. That's the least of our worries. It's actually, I didn't even write it down because the merging was so gross. Back on the TV, the characters who Jubilee and Sunspot are watching actually like force push at the screen, breaking the fourth wall fully. The popcorn goes flying. This monster starts to come out. And then Jubilee splits it and you see gore. You actually see inside this thing's head.
That's my note here is the ring girl happens and then Jubilee Mortal Kombat's them. That's like straight up a fatality.
Yeah. And split dead center, you see pieces.
And so it wasn't just the sexual innuendo in this, or very thinly veiled sexual innuendo in this episode. It was like just, that gore. I was like, telling my brothers, like, you maybe just want to watch it first before you watch it with a niece. Just so you know.
Just so you're aware. Yep. And then it turns into Roberto's mom and basically corners him against the wall, calling him a liar because we've seen Roberto has already like voiced that he feels uncomfortable not being able to tell who he is to his parents and stuff. And then Jubilee blows its fucking head up.
I love it. She's so violent this run.
Yep.
But the other head that comes out of the mom's mouth, that wasn't the dad, right? That seemed weird.
I couldn't tell if that was supposed to be the dad or if it was supposed to be like a younger version of Roberto. It was not actually clear to me.
I was kind of wondering if I looked up like what other people were talking about it online, and they seemed to think it was like maybe a bully or something,
or a brother or something.
Yeah.
I don't think we have the answer to who it specifically is, honestly. Really quickly, we find out that the Wolverine that is engaging with Morph turns into Sinister in front of them. So it is crystal clear it is not actually Wolverine that is doing any sort of like body horror or anything like that. It's more, imagination happening. So Cyclops and Bishop go into Jean's room, which is technically the Goblin Queen's room. And then there's this like weird tentacle monster that pops out. A teddy bear turns into Xavier. That's creepy as hell. And it's literally basically like shit talking Scott and saying you have demerits because you didn't impregnate the right woman.
It's such weird language.
Along with, you failed the team, but we're going to point out you had a kid with the wrong woman.
So it's interesting to realize in hindsight, like these are all supposed to be their interviewers. So like he's thinking that.
Of course.
In those terms, like I impregnated the wrong woman. Who thinks that, man?
And then Bishop is seeing also from this tentacle monster, his sister basically being like, you abandoned us. And it's like, yeah, he kind of did.
I forgot about her.
Yeah.
Like it's Shard, right?
Yep. That is when you do see the quick flashback over to the living room where Jubilee blows up Roberto's monster head thingy. And then I know about this one because Charley shared it on their Instagram. The Beast elevator scene is a reference to some frames from the comic where this story took place.
Okay, because I didn't recognize the monster at all.
It was not a specific monster other than it was a being from Limbo kind of scenario.
Because I saw a couple people reference it as like a Miyazaki thing, but then I looked at the side-by-sides and was like, I don't know Miyazaki stuff that well, but it didn't look too similar.
It may have been kind of like a combination of styles because it was obviously a little anime inspired, but like the elevator was like a thing in Inferno. So
yeah, and this is one of the instances where I thought like Beast doesn't have the intensity of reaction that everybody else does, because he like cracks a dry dad joke.
It's like, yeah, I think one of us is on the wrong floor, I think was the joke.
Yeah, I was like, who are you saying this to?
Yeah.
The monster, I guess.
Yep. So at that point, we start to see the team coming back together. You have Cyclops, Bishop, Jubilee, and Sunspot, and then Gambit runs out of a room and is like, well, guess I can never unsee that one.
So do you think that was just the skin thing or more happened?
I hope it was just the skin thing.
Because I don't know because we left him, we don't know if more stuff happened. Like, I wonder if like more intimate stuff happened that he had to witness.
Or he had to put it down.
Oh, okay, yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah. Although the way he like shuts the door behind him, it's like, I don't know if he like whatever's still in there feels like it might still be in there.
I was just gonna say it. I wonder if he just saw the monster like fucking itself, you know, like the
merging itself.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Just like, because if his fear is that they're banging, it would make sense if he sees them banging, even if it's like this fake projection thing.
You're not wrong, Rod. Your theory holds up.
So he leaves the room and he's like, and I would have said that as a joke in '92, but they just made like 6 adult themed like things happen right in a row here, so like it wouldn't be out of character.
Right. Then we get Logan, Beast, and Morph catching up with the group, and Logan is like, what is going on? And that's where we get Morph is like, oh, we're in hell.
I don't know why, but the way that Morph delivered that, I think I liked them before, but I think I really like Morph now as a character. This is it seemed playful's not the right word, but like, I don't know. There's something that's clicked with me. I was like, oh, okay, I think I'm connecting with their like sentiment about being back on the team now. You know, like, right. What is going on? Like,
why did I choose to do this? And at that point, they actually do start falling into hell. The ground gives out from under them, and Beast is, you know, kind of referencing Sinister's flair for the classics, and is like, oh yeah, this is literally Dante's Inferno that we're falling into right now.
Yeah, and I appreciated. I don't think it was the full theme song, but the score during that section had like synth playing the X-Men theme kind of throughout like the action stuff that was happening. There was a nice little touch.
Yeah, so the demons start popping up, and then reason why I point out the demons here, effectively the demons here are kind of called goblins, even if it's not what we consider a goblin from like Lord of the Rings and stuff like that, because that is actually why she chooses to say, I am the Goblin Queen, because she has the ability to summon goblins.
I did not put that together, and now that makes so much more sense.
I literally did digging on the side for that one, because it did not feel like it, aside from Sinister saying my queen earlier, the goblin part it's a little bit of a looser interpretation. Yeah. So the demons / goblins are popping up. Scott is able to know that it is not Sinister, that it's the Goblin Queen who's doing all of this. Beast throws out a Lewis Carroll referencing the Jabberwocky, which, okay, I've not watched Alice in Wonderland since I was a child. The Jabberwocky's only in the book, not in the Disney Alice in Wonderland stuff, right?
I do remember there being like a more like realistic adult version of Alice in Wonderland. Was it Return to the Looking Glass or something?
Through the Looking Glass?
Yeah, there was something where like Alice went back.
Right. But I'm saying the original Disney didn't include the Jabberwocky, I feel like.
I don't remember it being in there. I remember it being in the Return one,
which I've definitely never seen.
Yeah.
Yep. There is a point where Wolverine is falling and Bishop launches Beast. There's a point where Beast is falling and Bishop just grabs Wolverine and tosses him, and it's like effectively saved him by tackling him across the fall. I was like, how strong is Bishop? Like, we kind of talked about this with Beast in episode 1 of like, how strong is Beast that he knocked a Sentinel over with his bare hands. Bishop just tossed Wolverine like a fucking football.
Was that a variation to the fastball special?
It felt like it. I feel like this show is just giving a lot of people their own fastball specials.
I like there was a bunch of memes I saw of this shot where it was like Wolverine and Beast 69ing, because it was that position. It was like head to crotch, and they were just rolling across the thing. But besides the joke, I was like, are they just teasing it until it happens? You know, like the actual fastball special?
I feel like they might be. I think that's a totally valid scenario. Like, because I think we're gonna see Colossus at one point, because I want to say I saw an image that was Colossus, but not from the fight scene at the UN. I could be totally wrong, but I think I saw that.
Gotcha. Yeah, and because I was like, I wasn't personally familiar with the fastball special before this podcast and talking to you and some other guests about it, but I remember the combination you told me, and I was like, well, this is the right people, but the wrong combination of people.
Right. And then we get a awesome synergy where Bishop is like, charge me up, and Cyclops just unleashes an optic blast into Bishop, charges him up, and then he basically gives an exorcism by killing all these demons. And then Cyclops and Bishop just look at each other, and I swear to God, it was like it felt like the same energy as Predator, where they do the arm-to-arm handshake, but they go, "You're welcome," at the exact same time to each other.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and I think I realized then, because this version of the show is a lot more accurate to the powers and stuff. I think I realized that Bishop is not just like energy beam energy. He's taking like movement, like velocity, right, and turning into energy. Because like once again with Scott, it's not a laser beam; it's like force. So he's taking like
kinetic.
Yeah, like kinetic energy, and then just like turning it into a beam. And I love the visual of it, where he took like the beam in the sky to like fan out.
Yeah,
like it was so badass.
Yeah. So I do think there is actually a little bit of a difference between the kinetic energy aspect of it, and then there's something to it that it's still technically a level of energy that he's able to absorb. And energy is probably not the right phrasing for it, but I do know like Sebastian Shaw from the Hellfire Club is specifically kinetic energy. And that's a difference between Sebastian and Bishop.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But yes, so like he's still absorbing what is going into him from the optic blast. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just not a laser. Yeah.
The team ups in this, even just 3 episodes in, man, they're all amazing. There's always there's more than one usually, but like at least one like just epic, like, unexpected team up that's just like phenomenal visually.
Yeah, like even the last episode with the swords coming down from the metal that they turn into the giant cage and all that stuff. So a giant demon master mold with horns this time pops out of the lava.
So the captions describe this as a demonic sentinel.
I mean, yeah.
This is interesting. Yeah, I guess Master Mold's also said, it was just interesting. Like, I was like, is that what they're going to call it? This is the official name for it?
Right. So, because it was speaking off camera. God, I was like, why is it saying the name of it?
Oh, yeah.
So Jean returns. Scott sees it is his Jean, and you get this great shot of her reflected in his visor. They're doing an amazing job of animation with the visor in this series.
Yeah, so like choosing when to show his eyes versus reflection, angles and stuff.
And then Jean is able to lift everybody up, undo the transformation of the Inferno, and then faints again.
Like, so not only the first time we saw her, she fainted. The moment she wakes up, pretty much just faints.
Yep. So Goblin Queen is there, is like, basically taunting, and points out that Scott can't even say her name as Jean.
Yeah.
And then gives the great intro to herself. I didn't write the full thing down, but the part that I did love was scorn and fury forged in righteous brimstone. And I am the Goblin Queen.
Yeah, so now that you say that those were goblins, that line makes sense.
It makes so much more sense when you have that context of the name change, right?
Yeah, and with Sinister calling her
the queen.
His queen.
Yep.
Because I was like, okay, I'm just chalking it up to like comic camp that she's like, I'm the Goblin Queen. Sure. But now that has context, yeah.
And it's like, you just saw a taste of my power, probably suggest you don't follow me. Scott begins to charge, and then she unleashes his energy and just knocks everybody on their ass, basically.
I guess she was being polite too, right? Because she could have vaporized them.
I don't know if she could have vaporized them, but she definitely overpowered them.
Because I, like, between, like, changing the reality and stuff, I was like, this is a fucking dangerous world to have her and, like, Wanda exist in the same, like,
right.
That's crazy.
Yeah, but this version of Wanda is not that bad.
I guess we haven't seen her since... What, like the
Wundagore Mountain episode?
Yeah,
the secret, one of the secret baby episodes. That's what's not happening in Evolution. We haven't had secret babies yet.
Yeah, because they're all teenagers.
Yeah, no, there's no babies. Everybody's a teenager. So we're in the med bay. Rogue and Magneto return. Rogue realizes Gambit is fucked up and instantly runs over to him, though.
So Michael, where were Rogue and Magneto? Did they actually book out the danger room to go fuck, and they just got back from that?
I think so. I'll rephrase. I think they might have actually been in the danger room and just were completely oblivious to everything else that was going on.
So Morph probably
not necessarily to fuck, but I do think that they were in the danger room.
So the person in me that knows like stories aren't always are probably not what they seem for, you know, literary reasons and stuff. I'm guessing we're supposed to be led to believe that they're sneaking off to go hook up, but we're gonna find out there's some other actual heroic thing they're working on together, something, right? Like something that's not hooking up. That
I kind of think they're hooking up.
Okay.
I have no confirmation as to that, or like from, because like I said, I didn't read a lot from this era, because I want to say I restarted reading at like 85 to 80 era, because there's an awesome X-Men 300 cover that I'll send pictures. I'll post it on the Instagram. Like that was where it was, but it was like, this was like already intros of Bishop and shit like that. So the Rogue and Magneto story was already kind of like done at that point.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Yeah. So that makes Morph a little like less evil in the sense that
because they're actually fucking.
Yeah. They didn't like go in ahead of time and schedule all these fake Rogue Magneto sessions.
Yeah. So Magneto asks what's going on. Cyclops mentions, you know, Sinister and stuff like that. And Roberto's like, Sinister. He kind of gives like the look of like, what the fuck? And then Morph does the lore drop on Sinister, and you actually see their face from when they had returned from their captivity, and they had just done the preacher stuff with like the big bags under their eyes, and that worn out version of Morph. Yeah,
such a reminder what Morph had been through, because Morph has been pretty happy-go-lucky so far.
Jean cannot help, but she's hearing all the voices from like the psychic yelling and stuff like that, and is unable to control her powers. And then Hank straight up drugs her. He literally like hits her with like a morphine needle or something like that to put her out.
Because he said she's not used to having like her full force of powers back.
Right. Or she, however long she'd been under, she wasn't able to keep control of them anymore.
Or so he thought.
And Magneto's like, all right, we're going to take this dude down. And it's like, we're going to put together a surgical strike. And I was like, okay, I feel like this is one of those where Xavier wouldn't have done it this way, but I actually fully agree with Magneto of like, if this guy is bringing this to your house, literally, he needs to get put down.
Yeah, no, totally. And I can't decipher my note here, but there was something here, and maybe you alluded to this earlier, but Scott stops just short of calling Jean his wife.
Oh, because he's basically being like, I couldn't protect her and stuff like that.
I remember now. He's like, I couldn't protect my son, and I couldn't protect my... And he just kind of gestures it. Yeah.
Yeah, my her. Yeah. Because I think to what you said, he doesn't even know when the swap happened. So is it even his Jean that he got married to?
Yeah.
Yeah. Morph lets everybody know that they know where Sinister is and can take everybody there. Cyclops does the quick check of like, are you sure? And Morph is, I'm not going to let them hurt anyone else. So Morph is like, I'm going. And we split the team where it's going to be Morph, Bishop, Magneto, and Cyclops, because they're the ones who are not fucked up from the attack. And obviously Hank needs to stay behind as the only optometrist to take care of Jean. Yep.
I hope she needs to have like glasses replaced or something at one point, just to
justify it. In the lab, you see Sinister and just talking about, with Nathan in his hands, how it is the greatest possible combination between the parents' DNA to put together Nathan and this potential that's waiting to be unlocked. And all I kept hearing in my head as he was saying it, and Rod has the shit-eating grin on his face right now because he knows what I'm going to have to say out loud. The Cyclops semen that haunted us since the second season of the show has come back.
Yep, it literally came to fruition.
Yeah, you're not wrong, and I hate that you're not wrong, Rod. Like, you and Wally have made that a thing stuck rent-free in my head for almost 2 years now, and I mean, at least a year and a half, and damn it, you were right.
It's hard not to think about when all Sinister keeps talking about is their combination of DNA. I was like, well, you're not talking about hair samples, so I don't know. The whole time he was carrying the baby, though, I was like, what do you get? Like, are you going to drop him? And you're like, oh, you did.
Yep. Literally drops the baby in the green vat, and then like this smoke like starts to go up around this mist around the kid. So
I was like, okay, yeah, I guess we just accept this is a super baby. So
back outside, the team has arrived. It looks like it's a church and a graveyard. Like,
that sounds right.
Because I know that's where I'm going to set up my secret villain lab, is in the middle of a church in a graveyard.
Yeah, because the baby got baptized. That's what happened.
One day, Rod, we are going to do a video episode, just one.
Or if you want, we can just get John to like record a GIF of him just like dropping his head, and you can just play it on repeat. Right?
Can we put that as a sticker on Instagram, so that way when I upload, this was a sexual moment for me, I could just have the GIF next to it. The pull back the curtain for everybody. Rod does amazing things with our audio. He is the one who chooses what the clip is. So if there is a clip that you're like, oh, I wonder why they chose it, there's not a they. This is a Rod does his great work. I trust him. If he puts the clip, as long as I don't think it's something that's going to get us removed from the internet, it goes live.
Yeah, and usually it's at the end of however many hours of editing, and wherever my sense of humor is at that point is the taste you get.
Because we went from, this was a sexual moment for me, to the following day, this is one of the most amazing heartfelt speeches ever, and we're literally talking about
that's right.
We're talking about Magneto's origin story. Those were our back-to-back posts, 2 sets of 2 days in a row, because we uploaded as a Instagram video, and then 2 days later they go live as a reel. So
yeah, and that makes sense too, because the first one was an overnight. And when were you texting me? I think I'd finished that we finished recording around like 11 or midnight or something.
We finished after midnight.
Okay, it was after midnight. And then I finished editing that episode like 9 or 10 the next morning.
I didn't know that you were already done at that point.
Or well.
I was asking you like, I was saying like, hey, let me know when you're done so I can start. And you're like, oh, I'm already done with the first episode. I'm like,
yeah, I had like 20 minutes left on that one. But then the second episode, I had taken a nap. And so I think that's reflected in the clips chosen.
I think so too. As they're ready to go in, Morph makes sure to point out to remember that they refer to this one as Jean, not as the Goblin Queen. Like, so even Morph is like, just remember, they're a victim in this too. Like, this isn't only their fault. They didn't choose for this to happen.
That's an interesting perspective from Morph, because Morph has, attacked the X-Men and stuff being under Sinister's control. So their perspective is like very unique to like none of the other X-Men knows what that feels like.
Yep. So going inside, the Goblin Queen is sitting on the throne. I must have been tired when I wrote this note, because instead of GQ, I wrote GK for Goblin King.
That's another character, though, in Marvel, right? It sounds like one.
It probably is. I don't know. There's like 90 Goblin characters because of all the Spider-Man shit going on right now. Or it's the Goblin Kink because of all the leather that they're wearing. I don't know at this point. And they hear Morph's comment, and it was like, oh yeah, I know not what I do. That reminded me of the Bible quote.
That is, yeah.
That has to be a reference to the crucifixion, right?
Yeah. Father, forgive them for what they do.
Yeah. Okay. I'm not crazy like connecting those two. Okay.
And it's interesting that happened simultaneously with what she did physically. What she fatal attractions them.
Yeah.
Uncrossed her legs. Can you imagine if she was wearing the outfit in the comics and did that uncrossing legs? Because it like she's just wearing like a sheet, right? Like barely.
Yeah. Pretty much.
But was that even though we'd gotten so many like non-kid themed stuff up to this point, that still was surprising to see her just like uncross her legs like Sharon Stone. I was like, whoa, we're just going for it.
That's where Goblin Queen just kind of like just starts going for it with everybody, and mentions that all Scott is able to do is follow, and then just proceeds to blast him.
Both figuratively and literally.
Yeah. Rod, who did Morph turn into?
Oh, Ileana, right?
Yes.
I was kind of proud of myself because, once again, these awful Facebook groups, or good Facebook groups, awful people. Like, I want people to, like, I don't know. I need to have more confidence in myself when I see some of these people comment. With their full chest, they're like, this shit doesn't make any sense. Like, Ileana has never once appeared in X-Men. I'm like, okay, it was a brief one, but, like, she has been in this. Like, there's a whole episode about her.
And I believe from a timeline perspective, it would have been 4 years ago. So actually the timeline can work out that because when Ileana is doing all the stuff as Magic, she's still a teenager. So it's like Jubilee age. So it's like, it's not that much older than when we saw her. Maybe she's 14 instead, a 10-year-old kind of scenario. Yeah.
But I was just like, regardless, we did see her, and not like a flash in the pan. Like, the whole episode was about saving her and everything. So it was enough for me to remember. Right. I'll put it that way. So
the Goblin Queen starts teleporting instead of having a fair fight, and then proceeds to possess Morph. They kind of revert into like the bald version, but with the eyes. And then they transform into the alternate version of magic known as Dark Child, which is comic canon of like when Ileana was like the queen of limbo, essentially.
Okay, so that's the one I thought it might have been the same character, but I didn't recognize the horns and everything.
Yeah, when she goes full demon, that is essentially Dark Child.
Is that the version that has the superpower of being racist that goes into New Mutants?
No. See, that was very specific to New Mutants, that she was racist specifically against First Peoples. So
and also be an A-list actor, like such a bizarre combination.
There was nothing about that combination that made any sense.
Right.
So they start attacking Bishop. Mm-hmm. We get Magneto squaring off against the Goblin Queen, and I have just full-fledged lost my mind writing notes at this point because they all say GK instead of GQ. And you get this telekinetic versus magnetic battle where he's throwing like pieces of the windows and everything at the Goblin Queen. She is responding by throwing both the metal and the glass at Magneto.
Yeah, that was such a well choreographed fight.
Yeah.
Because he's so used to like having the maximum power. And she even says like, "Oh, I can do better than just the metal," because he pulls like the solder out or whatever they use in the stained glass. And yeah.
Yeah, and then she has a great cutting line, which is, "Oh, a villain playing dress up as a hero. I should have you as a toy." And then she proceeds to just like annihilate him with, he cannot stop all of the glass making it through his shield bubble, and he gets really fucked up.
Yeah, so actually in this part, but also other parts of this fight earlier and stuff, we were talking about not only is there blood in this series, there's like a lot. Like she wipes blood off her face. There's blood drops on the ground. He gets cut up.
Yep.
It's
like, not just his clothing is shredded. His clothing is shredded and he's cut up from it.
Yeah, and it was like really impressive for him as a character, but also just animation wise, them showing like the little, I don't know how else to describe them. They look like the shields that Doctor Strange makes.
Yeah.
You know, like that went around him, and he wasn't, because he couldn't protect himself with the magnetic ball. Like it was like 100 like little mini shields he was like maneuvering to try to. I was just impressed, like someone choreographed that in the animation, but also him as a character, just to be able to like keep track of that much like flying glass everywhere, because it was like raining.
Well, and I think that's the whole thing is, in a previous version, or even like go back to the X-Men arcade thing, it was just a solid bubble that was around him and it would have protected from all different sides. This one, like we've talked about, they're more thoughtful with the powers. So it's not just a blanket, everything is safe bubble. It is, he still has to focus to defend against certain things, because if too much is going on from an area he's not paying attention to, that's how it makes it through and starts cutting him up. And then from off camera, Scott actually shoots the Goblin Queen, and that's where he's apologizing as she's literally wiping the blood on her lip, and it looks like she's like applying a weird level of lipstick to it. It was like really, really creepy. Like you made me bleed my own blood.
That's why you wrote GQ. That's the Goblin King. She was like, "I think I do like you, Scott."
And then she starts to possess Scott, goes in for the kiss, which we know she has her own blood on her lips as she's doing this. And she says, "Don't worry, you'll bleed too." And I thought that was a reference to It of Will Float 2. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I got.
Yeah. I really should have written down all the things I thought were references so I could check after the fact to see if we're right about any of them. We'll figure that out.
Well, this is up for interpretation, because like it's an alteration, of the same thing.
But it's still a reference. It doesn't have to be a one-to-one. An Easter. Yeah. Like one of my favorite Easter eggs, I want to say it's The Witcher, and I know it's weird for me to say it's my favorite if I don't exactly know where it was from, but it was a reference to Assassin's Creed, and there was a hay bale where there was like a dead assassin in it.
Oh, really?
And it was basically pointing out of like, oh yeah, if you jump from a rooftop and you go into a hay bale, you're gonna die. It's not gonna actually protect you.
Yeah. Oh, in the Witcher game?
Yeah.
Man, is that Witcher 2?
Or 3.
Or 1?
Probably 3.
Okay. I've only started playing 2. I started playing it because all my friends said it was really, really great. It was like a few years ago and I haven't finished it, but I wasn't ready for like how like spicy the whole thing was. Like he goes and takes a bath and stuff. I'm like,
there's a lot of baths in The Witcher.
I was expecting like Assassin's Creed, like, oh, he's gonna jump around and shoot things, and that does happen. But then it's like, let's just go to this inn for the night.
It's kind of shocking that The Witcher is hornier than Ezio Auditore from Assassin's Creed.
Oh yeah.
The name is just hornier, but we regress. So back over at the mansion, Wolverine is, they did it with a bat wipe too.
Yeah, I love that.
Logan is with Jean and trying to help her regain some control. She's screaming, she's hearing too many voices, and it's, concentrate on me, concentrate on my mind. And she starts remembering because of him. And he's like, go deeper. And the second he says go deeper, she starts crying.
And this is where, all jokes aside, he actually does love her. It's not because she didn't throw up when she went in there.
Yeah, it's not going into Gambit's head.
All right. So, because it would be easy to think Wolverine's just lusting after this very attractive woman that's the maybe wife of one of his colleagues.
Yep.
But we don't know what he was thinking, but her reaction was it's not just
it's not just a physical thing. Okay. Yeah, she starts crying. She's like, I mean all that to you, and he's like, more than that. In the perfect timing for Wolverine's life, yet again, there is a flash where Jean feels Scott's pain, and she's like, I gotta go. And Beast is like, your body is in no condition to go anywhere. And she gives the most badass responses. Yeah, my body's not going to be an issue.
I also like that they gave the Jean Grey version of bitch please, because she's like, Beast please.
Yeah.
My body's not going to be. I was like, what? I rewind it. I was like, did she just beat bitch please Beast, but made it custom?
Yeah. And then she's basically like, this ends now. The Goblin Queen is taking down Scott, essentially. And at that point, astral form of Jean arrives and pulls the Goblin Queen into the astral plane, which I was not expecting that to be where they were going to fight each other, basically.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I didn't know what to expect from anything, because this started off in literal hell and then went to a church Castlevania thing or something.
Yep. Goblin Queen starts to give, the speech of you took my face, you took my husband, you took my family, and now you're trying to take my mind. From the character's perspective, I get it. It's if all these memories feel like they are your memories, why would you not interpret it as this person is coming in to try to take your entire world away from you?
Yeah, and I don't know, and maybe if we ever end up talking to Charley about this episode, we can see if my kind of observation, maybe theory about this is right. It seemed to me that Goblin Queen was presenting all these memories, but it seemed to be more of are just the traumas, because she was pulling all that, because she specifically said I was the Phoenix, I was this or whatever.
Yeah, and it was I was the Phoenix, I was power incarnate, and Jean asked back, power, is that really all you can remember? Yeah,
but Jean's life was all encompassing. It was being married and all this stuff. So I like that we're in an era of Marvel, as much shit as the general public gives to the MCU. Mm-hmm. I like that we're in this era where we're talking about stuff by one of the ongoing themes we see in a lot of these shows. And I was specifically thinking of Shang-Chi. I guess minor spoiler for Shang-Chi if you haven't seen it yet.
If you haven't seen it yet, it's too late for a spoiler window.
The moral of the story is you can't totally be defined by your trauma. In Shang-Chi specifically, you can't try to be the idealized version either. You are the sum of your parts. And for him, it was more black and white, and that it was one parent was extremely traumatic and the other parent was only positive, and they were just well, you can't just be one of the two. You have no choice. You are both of these. And so this one, what I felt what kind of started snapping Goblin Queen out of things was seeing the real Jean had all the life experience and not just these hugely traumatic experiences.
Right. And then it's let's see where it all started. And you see, closest thing you will get to Jean's origin, I think, ever in the show, of the first time where she met Charles Xavier and shows up at the house, and Charles asks, well, why do you think I'm here? And it's, Jean who's holding the stuffed Cyclops toy, which we referenced in 92. And it's well, my parents say I think too much. And then Charles does the great, I get it. And then in his own mind, just telepathically to her, says, I think all the time too.
Yeah, that was a really sweet way of having a kid, how they had explained to them with their mutant powers. But also, I guess she was fairly young when she manifested?
Yeah, because it sounds like she manifested earlier, because she was definitely young enough that she was holding the stuffed animal. But then it's an even further flashback, because it was well, that was the first day of the rest of my life. But what happened? And it's her seeing her friend Annie running across a street, it's implied that Annie is hit by a car. We're told that she's killed. And that is actually what triggered her powers starting when they did. So it wasn't the pure, like, you have a puberty moment. It was like, oh, it was a traumatic moment is what set it off for her.
I think this episode is, the first time I learned Jean's actual origin story. I don't think I knew that story about her friend dying. And I like the way they displayed it too, where like when they look around the street, there's like a picture frame or a mirror maybe to like look into.
And then the Goblin Queen is like, this is all mine, like saying that the pain that she experienced because Jean has forgotten some of this stuff. And it's kind of her re-experiencing it through what she's going through with the Goblin Queen. And then you see a bunch of reference photos like flying in the background, like poster style. You see the classic 5, you see the wedding, you see, the current team, the classic Dark Phoenix stuff. You see the pose of Scott holding a presumably dead Jean as the Phoenix. And then there was another shot of the old team too. Like they're putting a lot of emphasis on the original 5. Like we're seeing a lot of Bobby and Warren that we didn't see previously. Goblin Queen basically gives her last like defense of, we are what we remember. You remember nothing, so you are nothing. And then the astral like giant version of Jean Grey eats the Goblin Queen.
So
and then there's a big baby.
So I didn't necessarily see this myself, but I once again like went online and saw some people's interpretation that like the Jean Grey that ate everything like was like swallowing the experiences or the trauma or something like that. Maybe that's the interpretation. Right.
By eating Goblin Queen, it unlocked all the memories that original Jean had forgotten up to this point, like essentially.
Then the baby thing, that's straight up like what, like is this
Space Odyssey, 2001.
Yeah, so shit was weird. Like I was like, are we seeing we're seeing the inside of Jean's womb?
I mean,
is that what we're saying?
Even had vibes of Aeon Flux, the cartoon, not the movie, but it like there were parts of it that I was just like the giant baby and stuff like that. It's like whether or not that was intentionally Aeon Flux, it definitely gave me that vibe.
Or I guess not Jean's womb; it was Goblin Queen's womb or Madeline's womb. Right.
Wow, it was sharing the memory that this Jean would not have had because she was not there for the memory that you're about to see of. This was the best memory of the best moment of my life. And it was when Nathan is born. And I don't know how I've never, ever picked up on it until watching this episode. Nathaniel Essex is Sinister's real name. And that's to your point of sleeper agent or whatever you want to call it. There had to be something imprinted that was a piece of that name.
Yeah, that's what I kind of like. And I didn't put it together until this episode either. That I kind of assumed because he had said that he had like predispositioned her to always like want to leave and stuff. Like, so he just kind of, you're going to name this child after me just out of spite against Scott.
Yeah, it's like the definition of hubris is you're naming this kid after me and you have no choice in the matter. And then Jean says to the Goblin Queen that is absolutely your memory. You have a living reminder of the purest love two people can share.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. I did put that together, that Jean showed her, the Goblin Queen, like her own unique memory.
Yeah, like this is the thing that you own.
This is yours and I have no ownership on this whatsoever.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, because everything up until when she gives birth, it's kind of like TBD of who and what and when. But this is like the crystal clear, like this is yours and I cannot take that from you. And at that point, the Sinister gem shatters. And Goblin Queen reaches over to Scott and it's like, let's go save our son.
It was like jolting, but it was like kind of like refreshing, because like we just saw like all the battle stuff. And you just see, it's like you see somebody like wake up.
Yeah.
Like a sleeper agent thing.
The baby is floating in the green vat and doing pretty okay.
Yeah, I guess Sinister did say that the baby was like invincible, right?
Well, the whole point is putting it into the vat to make it invincible. I think that's one of those like sci-fi concessions of like the equivalent of like a Bacta tank or whatever it is. Like, there's something that the kid is not suffocating because of. So,
well, see, I thought that the tank was full of that technovirus.
Well, it's the technovirus and then the green shit
and whatever else.
Yeah,
okay, yeah, the magic fluid.
There definitely is precedent within sci-fi of like there are liquids that people could be encompassed in that they like. Was it like the Matrix? Yeah, like you're in this thing that you should be drowning in, but you don't. So
yeah, and maybe I just remembered. Someone tell me if I'm just making this up and like kind of seeing it, but I could swear that baby is wearing a utility belt. You know, like
he was wearing
Cyclops
a diaper.
style. Well, there was a diaper, but then around the diaper, it looked like a Cyclops style utility belt.
Oh, that was kind of like holding him up or something like that. Yeah. So Scott shoots and the Goblin Queen blasts Sinister. You get that great shot of like, there's a hole in Sinister's chest and he's totally okay with it.
Yeah. Well, he was a little scared. He said it's impossible. I was like, really impossible? You invite you?
Yeah.
Got these people to come here.
Well, sorry. When I say he's okay with it, I mean he's more concerned with them being in the room with him than the fact that a piece of his body is no longer attached.
Yeah.
Scott runs over, shoots a hole in the glass, goes and grabs the kid, and Sinister actually points out there that they've doomed their son.
So, yeah, because the way that he like sneered and like smiled basically before he like Homer Simpsoned out of that room, did he mean for all that to happen?
No.
Oh, okay.
I think he was going through the process of giving the baby the techno-organic virus because the virus itself, if it took full hold of him the way Sinister wanted it to, it would basically make him invincible. Scott shooting the vat and interrupting it kind of stopped the process. And that's why he's like, well, you doomed this kid. You fucked this up. And Sinister tries to fight back. Goblin Queen defends on it. Scott gets a call back to his line from 92 of "It's over, Sinister."
Yeah.
And then Sinister kind of like, to your point, he fucks off Homer Simpson style and he sings a nursery rhyme called Ladybird, which weirdly enough, from the fact that this is happening within a church, goes back to the days where it was essentially used as a warning to Catholics about the possibility of them being persecuted.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, but it's basically being like, oh, look out, your house is on fire, meaning, you've fucked this up, basically.
I didn't recognize the song or the poem.
I candidly had to look it up. I did not know that off the top of my head.
But him doing that as he literally escaped into the shadows, I was like, wow, like we make jokes about him being a theater kid, but that wasn't even like hiding it.
No, that's a theater kid. He's totally a theater kid. Yeah. Yep. And as he does this, Scott does see the green virus has started to take hold on him.
Baby has this like pitiful little cough.
Yeah.
It's like, is that how that works?
Yeah. So back at the lab, Beast is explaining the techno-organic virus and essentially says it's too far advanced for what I can deal with because you're an optometrist.
Eye doctor.
Yep. People who didn't watch that episode of 92 or listen to especially our commentary on it are like, what are these guys talking about right now?
Yep. So far, that's all we know the Beast is in this show is an eye doctor.
Because he did eye surgery on Carly that gave her sight back. And then we've never seen Carly since.
She didn't make it. He's not a good eye doctor.
Her eyes fell out.
He's like the Zoidberg, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't know how humans work.
He basically says that the virus is progressing too rapidly. So obviously it's not going in the direction of where Sinister was trying to make Nathan invincible. Kind of gives the impression that it's going to be fatal. And it's the Goblin Queen who says, not in our time. And Bishop references that he knows somebody who can basically make just about anything in his time. And we know that is his forge. So, So it looks like the only solution is we have to send our son into the future. And Scott instantly is not okay with it. He's like, we can't do this. Like, we can't abandon our kid. I'm not going to be like my own father was.
There's two things about that. I love when he was cradling Nathan. It's like, don't any of you know how it feels to be abandoned? I was like, read the room, dude. Like, there's like a couple orphans. Like, everybody has some sort of abandonment. Like,
I think Beast is probably the one who doesn't of the group. I think Beast, canonically ended up still having a pretty positive relationship with his family. I could be wrong about that, but I think he was actually the one that shit stayed pretty okay for.
Yeah, but everybody else, something traumatic happened when they were young.
Guy who lived through World War II, guy who had to abandon his own time and had his sister's demon face yelling at him earlier, and the clone of your probably wife. Yeah. That's the rest of the room right now. And Goblin Queen is like, we want to give him the best possible future. And Scott just is like, I don't want them to ever feel abandoned. And Goblin Queen's like, they'll never feel it. And that was like, it took me a half a second of like, oh shit, they're literally going to put some sort of psychic trigger that they can never feel like their parents abandoned him. And that's why Scott won't be a part of it.
Oh, I didn't even put that together. I just thought that she meant that, like, the baby's so young that there's no attachment or whatever. But that makes more sense what you said, because my note here was like, it's interesting that he says he won't abandon his son and then immediately abandons his son. Right.
And I think it's the whole, like, similar to his dad of throwing him out a plane because he thought his kid was going to die. Scott's like, I don't want to abandon my kid, but what choice do I have? Because if I stick with my kid, because Bishop's thing only has enough charge for 2 people to go back to the future. Yep, that's used properly. That was the right present tense and such. Yeah. That it's like, you have to. But he's like, but I can't make him forget about me either. And that's where Scott steps away.
That makes more sense now that's what was happening. Because I was like, well, he just like left the room. I got flashbacks from my college girlfriend yelling at me over the phone that we didn't communicate well enough, and then she hangs up, like slams the phone. He's like, we don't communicate enough, Rod.
Back in the day when you actually could slam a phone.
Yeah, and you could hear it.
Yep. Like you knew your phone got slammed on you.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, that makes so much more sense. And it's all because we know that. Man, how do you word this with the tenses? It's not that they will see him again. They have already seen him again.
Yes, but Scott doesn't know that.
That's what I mean. Yeah, it's like...
Oh, yeah. The fact that we as the viewer know they have seen him again, and Scott is unaware of it.
Yeah, so he's all torn up about it. It's like, don't worry, you've seen them again. Is that the right... Yeah, that's the right...
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not goodbye.
But of course, Jean... who we think is the one that knows this from the interactions with Nathan or with Cable in the past. I don't think she's ever told it to Scott because she doesn't want to fuck up the timeline.
Or do you think she was confused back then because she's like, "Wait, I don't have no kid," or
maybe.
Yeah. That's left to interpret. Like, I guess they're gonna kind of maybe show a little bit more of that later. But, yeah. Because they did leave that open end in '92. It's really interesting for this to kind of complete.
So Goblin Queen is at the lake by the mansion with Nathan. There is not the massive, waterfall right next to the mansion. And via their telepathic link is like letting him know that you're perfect. We love you and we wanted to always give you the best possible future. And then Bishop opens the time gate and she's like, yeah, even if it's one without us. And then Bishop doesn't even say goodbye. Like, I think he knows this is such a mood right now that it's easier to stay quiet than say anything right now.
He just needs to be invisible. Mm-hmm. Like, if it wasn't for him physically needing to be there to do it, he just should be there.
Yep.
And this was obviously an emotional scene, but my friends with kids, man, all had a way more visceral reaction to this scene. And it wasn't even necessarily the way I thought. I was like, oh, of course, giving up your kid, I imagine that'd be hard or whatever. I guess whoever did the sound design for this, I imagine our parents, the same thing that all my friends with kids said was the thing that broke them was the crying being cut off by the shutting of the time portal, because it reminded them of having to go to work when they...
when the door shuts as they're leaving or something like that.
And they just have to be well, I have to be practical and go to my day job. And right. I was like, well, I haven't think about that. That's really rough.
Yeah. And then Goblin Queen herself is crying. And I wrote down a note that I think it says remember. And that's the last.
Yeah. She just say remember.
Yep. We see that Jean actually goes to the Goblin Queen as she's leaving and does kind of the ultimate kindness of this whole thing of, you can stay here if you want. This is your home too.
And I know a guy that would be willing to bunk with you.
In the comics, it's Scott's brother. That's a whole other thing. Goblin Queen asks Jean, what do you remember? And Jean's mostly everything. And it's and that's kind of why I need to go and start a new life. She was the one who wanted to leave the mansion. They point blank say, we don't know when the switch happened. We don't know which of us was the Phoenix or which of us even married Scott. They call out every one of those pivotal moments that go literally back to the earliest part of when Sinister even appeared in the show.
Me personally, would not be able to leave that open-ended. Mm-hmm. I understand her needing to go start her own life. I also kind of want to stick around to hash out what was whose experiences and not.
Right. And, Goblin Queen basically says, whatever happens moving forward, it's kind of my own future. I'm going to do my own thing. Jean starts to call her Jean, and Goblin Queen says, no, call me Madeline Pryor, which the show does not get into the reason for this, but Pryor was a play off of words from Sinister of her being a clone of the prior Jean Grey.
I was wondering about that because I was like, is that on the nose or not? I don't know where the Madeline part came from, but I hadn't heard
the prior part is. That is a intentional on the nose theater kid shit. Let's call it what it is. Yeah. Yep.
She kind of takes the sad Hulk exit.
Yeah. Just walking down the road.
To where, like, they're not a single person like offered a ride or called a cab or like because it looks like the view they gave that she has at least a couple miles to walk before there's anything besides just more trees. Very symbolic, but like practically it's like where are you going?
I'm pretty sure she's just cool with going anywhere other than being in that mansion right now.
Yeah, that's true.
Jump over. Scott is in the destroyed bedroom with the shattered photograph, and then Jean enters, and you get this fucking heartbreaking standoff between the two of them, not saying anything, silently in the room. And it's like, she, being Jean, has already acknowledged moments ago that she doesn't know when the switch happened, if she was actually the one who married Scott. And to your point, Rod, like, is this the ongoing thing of like, God, does he ever know when this was his wife and such?
Yeah. And it was a little like a very thinly veiled, symbolism of them in the ruins of their bedroom.
Yeah.
And they're standing like almost a full room's length apart from each other, just, eyeing each other down. You're like, okay, well, what now? And
then we get the moment, which I am sure helped bring you back up to a cheerful mode from this.
Oh, yeah. I cheered at this part. But before that, when they showed the bar.
The Tequila Mockingbird.
Yeah. So I knew you would hate it. But then
I do hate puns. Anybody who's new to the show, I fucking despise puns.
I did immediately send a picture to my friend Teresa because she actually has a film production company called Tequila Mockingbird.
Oh.
And I was like, I don't know, like, because you're in the same industry.
Mm-hmm.
Do you take it up with Disney?
Ask her if she named it after a bar just outside of Dallas, because that's what the weatherman says. And the weatherman is pointing out that, it's just this awful drought that's going on. We see the leather punk Storm sitting at the bar with a bottle, by the way. Like, not even a drink. She just has a bottle going right now.
So even though Mohawk Storm, I don't mind Mohawk Storm, is not my favorite, and I didn't like she got depowered, like, this is really cool to organically see her switch into the punk rock mode. Mm-hmm. Like, with, there's a reason that this happened. It's like, oh, man, she's drinking. I've never seen this Storm drink.
I wouldn't have expected this Storm to drink.
Yeah.
No. So a guy who is walking in and sitting down next to her is like, yeah, it'd be great if somebody could just come by and make it rain. And Storm instantly calls it out, like, speak plainly. Like, this is not fuck around time right now. Because she might not be able to hit you with a lightning bolt, but she could still stab you.
And that's the Storm we know. That's the one that told Jubilee that we're all freaks together.
He points out that he is Forge. He is an old friend of Charles Xavier. And that he is there to help her get back what she lost.
Yeah, I cheered, man. I was like, I love that team up. But then I got to thinking, like, wow, they haven't met yet, have they? Like, I never put that together.
No, because when the fight happened at the base, I don't think Storm was there in the X Factor episode.
Yeah, because my initial reaction was like, wait, would you recognize him? I guess not.
I mean, now I have to look up that was Cold Comfort was the episode title,
something like that. Yeah, but I'm sure that they did their continuity check with that because they've been so good about everything else. But that was just so cool because, like, I love being surprised by team ups,
right? Professor X, Cyclops, Jean Grey, Rogue, Gambit, Wolverine, Jubilee, Beast, Iceman, Forge. Yeah, she is not credited on the episode as a voice cast. So
such a cool team up, and so now I know, like, next episode to some extent is going to be if they keep the pattern up where the cliffhanger is the precedent for the next episode, then I guess it can't be really.
The next episode is here's the thing: the next episode is presented in advance in a little bit of a weird fashion because we know it is quote unquote two stories happening. We have Motendo which the write-up on IMDb says it's Jubilee celebrating her birthday playing a video game, essentially. And we know that that's obviously going to have some sort of reference to Mojo. But the other part is Life Death. And Life Death is the story from the comics that has to do with Forge and Storm and the powers and such. So,
yeah.
But it's a part 1 of 2. And part 2 happens like 2 weeks later.
Yeah. So I'm all confused of like, are we going to get a surprise, like, longer episode? Or is it just the 2 storylines in the same 32 minutes? Or
are we going to get 2 15-minute episodes because 30 minutes of Mojo is going to make me shove pencils into my ears?
Especially with the tone they've set in this one. This one is so much more serious. Like, there's no Jubilee's fairy tale stories. Like,
no, but he could also take the serious tone and, like, imagine if he's turning these games into, like, Streets of Rage or Mortal Kombat and shit like that.
Dude, if they do Mortal Kombat, just expect another clip where I'm talking about being a sexual experience. You just combine my 2 like lifelong fandoms, if that's the case.
I know. The only saving grace of your head not exploding is that Mortal Kombat is produced by Warner Brothers, and the fighting game franchises for the X-Men have all been run by Capcom, so never the two shall meet. Otherwise, I would never see you for like 3 weeks straight.
Well, I didn't expect them to do the actual thing, you know, it's just like a reference to it. But to your point, since they've always ever been like associated with the Capcom, if they do a parody or a satire, it'll probably be more of like a Street Fighter thing. Like, you know, so
yeah, for some reason, I am from the promo image that we saw online where it has like the character select screen and stuff like that. I actually think it's going to be like the homage to the Konami arcade machine.
Yeah, that'd be great. I have also learned, I saw that the Marvel has been posting like a teaser clip the day before each episode.
Which is perfect for us because our episode goes live, then Marvel does the teaser clip, so we're not saying something wrong that has been revealed too prematurely.
Yeah, and I didn't watch that out of caution, and I think I know now I'm not going to watch it because this one showed them going through like the hell sequence.
Yes, because the beast shot was in the teaser.
Yeah, so I wouldn't have wanted to see that before. I wanted to see that whole sequence in real time for the first time. Yeah,
I totally get that. I do want to send a quick shout out to Kevin Winston of Digital LA and Chris Riley from the X Reads podcast. So far, they have done 2 events that they've announced on their Instagram where members of the cast in Los Angeles have been at the Scum and Villainy Cantina, which is on Hollywood Boulevard, for those of you who don't know. So follow them. We'll share some links and stuff like that after this episode goes live, because there are possibilities, Kevin said, depending on availability and, you know, Disney PR hooking them up with people, of other ones happening during the course of this season. But it looks like it's probably going to be like a Wednesday night watch along sort of thing for the weeks that it is happening. So
yeah, that's fun. And Scum and Villainy is like, for those who are not here, is like the not Star Wars bar.
The fandom bar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like if somebody from legal asks, it's not Star Wars, but when you walk in, you know.
I mean, there is not a Harry Potter in Star Wars, okay, Rod?
Yeah, because there's Adobe at the door.
Yeah. And then they have had Lenore, voice of Rogue, who was there on week 1. And then this most recent one, sadly, I just couldn't make happen just because of schedule conflicts, where the voice of Sunspot, is it Guy Augustini? I'm apologizing if I'm saying the name wrong, but yeah, the voice of Sunspot was there for this week's watch along. So yeah, and I believe they do like a little bit of like a Q&A after and such. So yeah, but that's everything I got, Rod. I will say the IMDb trivia has gotten way, way worse for these. You know how you usually go to IMDb trivia on an episode, and if something is like, you know, how many people have like upvoted this versus downvoted this? It's usually like a 95% upvote percentage. There are ones that are like 30% because people are literally saying things that are just straight up wrong.
It's probably the same people posting on the Facebook pages of like where is Ileana? We've never seen her before.
Yeah.
Or like, you all 250,000 of you people have to wait 2 weeks because I decided to not watch this episode.
It's funny because I've actually become very friendly with the admins of that group, and they are doing their best. And like, I'm never going to look down on somebody who doesn't know something because they have not spent as much time in it. Like, you know this, like, we've been friends for a decade at this point, and we've been doing this show for over 2 years. I've never given you legitimate shit for not knowing something because you haven't read the comic. What I will give somebody shit for is when they don't know what they're talking about and they're willing to fight you over it. That's fun.
That's what I mean. It's like, it's the not knowing stuff it doesn't bother me really because I'm that guy. It's the way that a lot of these people like write their posts.
The indignation of it.
Yeah, it's like angry. They're like, it's like why are you guys spoiling stuff? I wanted to wait 2 weeks. I'm like, what the fuck? Who the fuck are you? Like what?
My favorite part, the guy that was like, we need to put at least like a week spoiler warning. I looked at their profile because you could do that and not look at their personal profile, but just see what their interactions within a Facebook group have been. That was the first post they had ever shared since joining in January. They had never commented on anything else. They had never done another post. It was literally, hey, can you guys chill? It's like, so to your point, Rod, of who the fuck are you? Yeah. That was the who the fuck are you moment. Like, because I don't know if you've ever noticed in Facebook groups, you get points, and the points mean nothing other than just show how much you interact with a group. Yeah. So the person had literally the minimum number of points, which was basically just, you have put up a single post. That's all it was.
I don't know. Yeah, so like, oh, okay, guys, whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, so they're probably the ones writing the trivia. Did you know, Easter egg, there's a Jubilee in this show?
There is always one, which I'm not against, which is this is the first appearance of this character in the animated series. When that's accurate, that is totally okay to have. Yeah. But
or, you know, I now remember one of the ones that actually infuriated me, and you had talked about this another time this happened, but then it happened for was it the second episode? I can't remember. But like someone asked like, wait, like why was Angel in this show? And then he just disappeared later. Like, were you just not watching the show?
Dude, I guarantee you that is the modern day. I'm going to watch this once. My phone is going to be in my hand and I'm going to look up and down during the course of it, which I do not do during this show. Like I waited so long to get this.
Yeah.
Like I said, I watch every episode twice. Once is watch the episode, consume it, and then the second time I'm watching it, I'm doing usually on my computer because it's easier to pause and replay with Disney Plus on desktop because I literally could just use the space bar as my pause button.
Yeah.
My TV does not respond at the right speed. It's it's some like LG smart TV that it's like I click pause and it waits like 3 seconds before it pauses. I'm like, this is not going to work for me. Yeah.
Yeah, I just like that's one of the instances where I was like, I wish I had the confidence of that person because they asked that question with their full chest without just backspacing 2 seconds.
My other favorite, hey, where can I watch this show?
That's the one where
that there were people saying names of websites that I'm like, that is definitely malware. That is definitely a virus. That is definitely going to sell your information if you click on those buttons. And to the credit of the moderators, they don't, those links are not real links. They are not like clickable, but it's like if somebody copies and pastes that, you deserve what you get. This is like downloading a song on LimeWire that was 845 gigabytes. You should have known.
Yeah. Yeah, the way I can see it thing is like, my guy, like Disney's not been hiding this.
And then there were a few great responses of like, hey, maybe support the art that you've been begging for 30 years. And you don't, like, I get, you don't need to have a Disney Plus subscription for an entire year. But if you're going into active communication in a group about the show, get it for the 3 months that you need to have it for. Or even if you don't want to do it in like real time, do a 1 month trial and watch every episode and then cancel your subscription after or something, you know?
Yeah, I was going to say, like, I feel like the fair things, if you don't want Disney Plus altogether, it's like you could probably do this in like 2 months would be like a good like in between, you know? Like if you haven't seen it to this point, you could start now and only pay for like, I mean, like April.
Literally
May.
Just do April, May and you have the entire season.
Yeah. And this show's worth $20 or whatever the fee is now and stuff. And
it's only at this point for Disney Plus.
Right. Although if you have Hulu, and I know not a lot of people do, but like there's this trick, like we'll see. Now that I say it, they'll probably stop doing it. But usually every Black Friday, Hulu goes on sale for like 99 cents a month. And so like I have Hulu for 99 cents a month. And Disney Plus is only a $2 add-on.
Right.
So there's other ways to go about stuff. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, at the worst, paying $20 for like literally the highest rated Marvel show ever now.
Yeah.
Not bad.
Yeah.
And there's other stuff on there.
And even if you don't want to watch the other stuff, like I said, just cancel right after, you know?
Right.
Rod, we've had a lot of thoughts. Luckily, you only have to edit one this week.
Yes, thank God.
And hopefully come next week, we'll have some cool additional announcements to share with you guys. But thank you for joining us. If you have any thoughts, please make sure to drop them to the comments for either the YouTube upload or the official Instagram posts about this episode. If you like what you heard, we would appreciate a rating on the podcast app of your choosing. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Spotify, YouTube Podcasts, and CastBox. And how long did we go for this time? Jesus Christ.
Yep, this is going to be a fun one.